Hey, 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 hey. So, I wanted to talk to you about something that's gonna make me sound like a complete hipster and just someone who has to go against the flow of things. And maybe I am, who knows. But I'd like to think that sometimes, in order to get a little bit of perspective on something, you need to force yourself to see things from another angle. So, right now, the entire IT community is all hyped up about Angular, JavaScript now, of course, because hey, who cares about anything else? Well, I do, but anywho, the hype right now is Angular and mostly React. If I'm honest, I think React is probably more hyped than anything else. And I've realized after talking to quite a few people about, everybody's talking about what they love about React and what's so great about it, and I ask, okay, so what do you use it for? And it feels to me that everybody is it's almost like jQuery used to be back in the day. In some ways it might still be that case, where it's so standardized and so popularized that people who are just coming into JavaScript actually think that jQuery is JavaScript. I mean, I remember that people, when I first started, you could not find, you had to literally go and look for solutions on Stack Overflow that didn't use jQuery. Every single thing had jQuery with it. And I think that's happening for JavaScript as well. For React. So the tool is so popular, it's so massive that people are just using it immediately without even asking the question, do I need this? Because actually, I mean seasoned professionals as well, they are so into this framework that they're not even stopping and thinking, all right, what am I actually building here? Do I need React? Because everybody just assumes that, hey, it makes JavaScript easier, let's do it that way. And I argue that that's a little bit wrong. I think that you've probably heard me say this before. You should think about the problem you're trying to solve first, and then choose your tools based on that, on all these circumstances. Think about things before you just jump to it. I mean, if you're always solving problems using the exact same tools, you're probably going to end up sometimes, it's not bad if you have a problem that is not effectively solved in any other specific way, but just think about these things. And here are some things, I made a video a little bit back about this very thing, how you set up a long-term project. And I don't use any React or anything, it's just native JavaScript and a server-side rendered, it is a very basic site. And I'm putting together a tech talk that I think is going to be pretty fun to make, where I'm going to show, from my perspective, two different applications and ask, all right, which one does make sense to make in React? And just see what the response is, because I'm willing to bet that there are a few of these, how do I put, my guess is that most of them are going to say that, I would build it in React, I would build everything in React. And what I want to argue is that if you are building a web application that has need of some things that are very difficult to get right in vanilla JavaScript, then yes, absolutely, I think you should use React, because it's going to make you more productive and make things easier on you. But if you're making something like a basic web shop, or something that, even if it can be production code, if you're making something that doesn't need all that much fanciness, and it's mostly because remember, we used to make web pages that simply refreshed the page when we clicked the button, and we used JavaScript to enhance that web page. You remember those days? Because these rules still apply. And I think that a lot of the issues that because people are going to tell me, oh, but you know, Frederick, it's so much nicer with React, and you have all this scoping and, you know, modules and all that. And I say, yeah, that's great, but if you think about it, achieving this isolation and modules and all that stuff, that's problem isn't React. Like Webpack solves that problem, Browserify solves that problem, and the others, I mean AMS and like all that good stuff, that problem is already solved. And so this is why I say that it's more important to learn from the lessons that React teaches you than it is to use the specific framework. Because if you've been working with React, you know that like there are some subtle things, like really nice directory structures like this, like encapsulation on the directory level, and these thoughts, they are more powerful. Because if you hopefully, if you, I'm not trying to promote myself, but if you want to see what I'm talking about, go and watch that video about setting up a long-term project, because it's going to illustrate what I'm talking about. Like, you can achieve this isolated, modularized benefit that React takes to the table with just vanilla JavaScript. And I'm not saying that that should be your default, but you really think about it, because there are benefits to doing things in vanilla as well. I mean, you're not locking yourself into anything. And if you're, like, React is a lock-in. Well, it's not as much of a lock-in as Angular maybe, but it is a lock-in. And we can have this discussion of pros and cons. But I mean, if I'm building a web page that is mostly just static content with a bit of JavaScript mutation, and then you can move between things, and you don't have the need of a full SPA, or because routing, I'm going to be honest, routing is something which, like, if you're re-rendering or you're dynamically adding HTML to a page, which is usually the case when you want to switch between different, like if you have a side menu or something and you want to switch between the tabs without reloading the page, yes, React and React Router does that really, really well. And I think that that's something you should be using if that's your case. But if you're not, if you don't care about page reloads and you're really about maybe a checkout flow or as I said, a web shop, then it doesn't make any sense for you to throw React in the mix. You don't get much, if you know what you're doing, you don't get that much for throwing that in there. And so I just want you to think about this. And my rules for, like, it's not exactly 3 rules, but my rules for making a scalable vanilla JavaScript project is use Webpack or a bundler of some sort. Your HTML partials or templates, like put things at the component levels. Don't create big pages that do everything at the same time. Create a page template and then import specific components like the sidebar and so forth through like your template files. And in that directory, you put them all in a directory just as you do in React. You put your JavaScript with that and the tests and all that stuff with the template components. So the effect is that instead of having an index.js or a component.js file that you do in React, you have a component.html or .blade if you're in PHP or .egs. You can, whatever templating engine you're using. Same principle. Only difference is that it's happening on the server. And then you use my absolute favorite thing about HTML, which is custom attributes. So custom attributes will allow you to, don't use class names to, because usually when you use vanilla JavaScript, you do document.querySelector or document get element by ID. Don't use get element by ID, use query selector, and then use a selector that is based around something like data-js is equal to something, because then you have a custom attribute that's very safe, it's very scalable, it's going to let you hook into the element that you want to apply your JavaScript to without having to have class names, which is semantic to CSS, which makes things a little bit brittle or like harder to change. So do that and simply have that bundled together. And even like CSS and Sass and so forth, put your Sass file inside of the same directory with your template and your JavaScript, and then import it and like build it through the like create a build pipeline that picks up all these files, bundles them, and puts them out into the public directory so that the server sends the public assets that are created to the client. Let's try that out. And as I said, before you get on the hype train, understand what the hype is about, because I believe that some of us who are maybe just starting out are using React, and we haven't really gone through that journey of knowing what problems that React is really solving, so we don't question it. It becomes our default. And I think that you should do your best to understand how things work from all possible angles. And if you're only using React now, try to do things in plain old JavaScript to just kind of see what React is giving you, because that will enhance your understanding of the problems that this framework is solving for you, but it will also make you a more well-rounded and more in-depth developer. So yeah, hopefully this has been helpful for you guys.